Welcome to Financial Issues, where we join reality with truth, helping you make the most of your money by honoring God with your investments. Now listen in as we give you the practical tools and advice you need to become a biblically responsible investor.
Good morning. Welcome to Financial Issues. It is Monday, July the 8th. We hope you had a wonderful day of worship yesterday and hopefully most of you had a long July 4th weekend and that you celebrated the freedom that we have in this country. And if you watched the July 4th show, that you took it to heart, you remembered where our freedom comes from, you thanked the Lord for it, and you shared your freedom story with someone else. Well, here at Financial Issues, we're a ministry and we help to educate people about financial issues from a biblical worldview. For just $132 a year, you can partner with us and learn how to defund darkness with our biblically responsible investment strategy and be encouraged to fund the light, to be an obedient, joyful, and generous giver. Well, let's start with our stewardship verse today from 1 Chronicles 12:32. Of Issachar, men who had understanding of the times, to know what Israel ought to do, 200 chiefs and all their kinsmen under their command. Seth, you want to explain?
Yeah, I'd be glad to, Shana. This is a core verse for our ministry. This was one of those favorite verses of our founder, Dan Celia, and he prayed this often, that he would be found as a son of Issachar with the wisdom that he had. So the sons of Issachar were men part of the mighty regiment of David. They were men who possessed understanding, wisdom, discernment of the times to be able to tell how things are happening societally and, kind of reading the book of nature and the book of history, as it were. And this is a great prayer for us, Shana, that praying that the Lord would give us wisdom and understanding. And I think it's a really wise prayer for us to ask.
It is.
Yeah.
And we still pray that today at the ministry. We still ask for that understanding of the times as well as we navigate through financial issues. But you know what? No matter how hard we pray, God will never reveal things to us that he chooses not to. So, I could pray every day fervently for a year and ask the Lord to tell me exactly where the market's going by the end of the year, or, some things like that. But, I have a feeling that God's answer would really be, Shana, is that really important? Why do you want to know that?
That's right.
So I think he would probably speak to me about much more important things.
Yeah.
But, he tells us not to hesitate to ask.
Absolutely. And it's a good reminder, Shana, God won't reveal the secret things that belong to him. What he will give us is wisdom to be able to discern, to be able to make wise decisions. Even though we can't look into the future and see what's going to happen, we'll be able to have what we need to be able to make good decisions in spite of it and because of it too.
Reminds me when Jesus was here on earth, and the disciples were asking him when he was coming back. He told them, that only the Father knows that. He doesn't even know. He doesn't even have that information at the time. So, God is gracious to us in our limited human understanding that and kind to us by not revealing some things.
Right.
So.
Absolutely. So, Shana, with that kind of as our anchor, that prayer of being found as sons and daughters of Issachar. We've come to the midway point of this year. 2024, I think, is going to go down as one of the most important years in our country's history. I think it'd be a good idea for us to kind of look back from a financial perspective and kind of see what's happened and see what it means for us and try to use some of that wisdom that we were just talking about there. So to start, we mentioned this just a little bit earlier last week. The major indices had a pretty positive first half. Shana, the S&P 500 saw 14.5% of returns in the first half. The NASDAQ rallied a little over 18%, and the Dow Jones not as much, but it still moderately rose about 3.8% in the first two quarters of 2024. So, Shana, what do we make of all this? The markets continued to rise. Why have we seen this trend in the first half of 2024?
Well, I guess trends don't really know calendar cutoff dates.
Yeah, that's true. It'd be nice if they did, but they don't.
Right. So, this trend was really kicked off with the NVIDIA earnings, the stellar NVIDIA earnings report, last year. And that really brought to the forefront the whole AI movement and the progress that's happening there. So I expect that to continue to unfold rapidly. And so, It's just like when the internet was introduced, it was a novel idea. I think that, people knew it was going to help business in some way, but they didn't really have all the details or know why. And I think that, there were a lot of companies that did really well. There were some that got way out ahead of things. There was a time when they put a whole lot of fiber in the ground, and it was really kind of overkill. And it's just, in some places they're just now starting to light up some of that fiber for the first time. So, some companies are going to benefit more than others, but I think it's going to be a very broad thing. It's going to, help in the healthcare sector. When we finally get to use some of this AI that's being built out, like I've said before, I think AI right now is just sort of a glorified search engine, a little bit better search engine than maybe Google, certainly better than Siri. Siri never seems to know anything when I ask her things. But
there you go.
And I think it helps to gather information and collect information, but we're still a far ways off. But it was a very narrow rally last year. The markets did well, but it was really isolated to what they called last year the Magnificent Seven. That's shrunk down a little bit. There's Tesla's not included in that this year, and Apple I think is just now starting to come to the party. Of course, none of those are biblically responsible, none on our list, but just as we're talking in general about what's happening.
Sure. Yep. And, Shana, you've mentioned on the program in the past, we could see a correction coming in the future. Could you speak to that a little bit more?
Well, I think if we wait long enough, we will. Yeah. It's just part of a normal cycle of business. There's ebbs and flows in the economy. The Fed is charged with trying to keep that on an even keel, but so many times when we intervene too much in the markets, that creates a really negative outcome. But sometimes pullbacks are caused by the normal business cycle. Sometimes they're caused by black swan events like COVID. Nobody saw that coming. I can't remember anybody that predicted that one. So what I would say to that is we always have to be mentally prepared for a pullback. We have to constantly ask ourselves, if my portfolio dropped by 10% or 20% or even 50%, what is my response going to be? And we have to manage that risk responsibly.
Yeah, that's good, Shana. We've talked about this before recently as well, but we've seen pockets of opportunity these past 6 months. Could you speak to these a little bit? What pockets have been available to investors during these first 2 quarters of the year?
Well, there's still things on our buy list, so that means that we still think that there's good companies to invest in. Will it be that you get the best price available? Maybe not. Some of the things on the buy list drop from time to time, and but we're not trying to figure out what's going to look good in the next 3 to 5 days or even the next 3 to 5 months. What we're trying to figure out is what is going to help your portfolio over the next 3 to 5 years and beyond, and we're even really longer term than that.
Yeah. That's good, Shana. Now, we got a big question coming up, and we might have to move this into the next segment as well, because it is a big one. But why don't we start it here? What impact do you expect the outcome of the 2024 election to have on the economy as a whole? And maybe we'll start with the markets. What impact do you think could happen either way?
Well, I've looked at a lot of differences between the candidates, and there are stark differences, especially when it comes to our Christian faith. And I think those are far more important than any economic implications that we could have. But, of course, there will be economic implications. I think that a Trump administration would be far more pro-business. I think it's going to create a better business environment, less regulation, less taxes. And to me, that is always very stimulative for the economy. I think that taxes are going to be better under a Trump administration for individuals than they will under a Biden administration. The thing that really worries me and concerns me is that you don't hear either candidate really pushing hard that they're going to cut spending. And I think that's the biggest problem that we have with government. I think there's probably a better chance of less spending with a Trump administration, just because, he's a business person. Joe Biden has never, to my knowledge, worked a day in his life in the private markets. He's been a career politician his whole life. So all he knows is, all he's been really successful at is keeping his job.
Yeah, right. Getting votes.
As an elected official, that's all he's been really successful at doing. Yeah. Whereas Donald Trump has had real world experience, with business. Hear the music. I know we got to take a break. We hope that you'll stick with us because we're going to be back with more financial issues. Finish up this conversation and have more to come. So don't go anywhere. I'm your host, Shana Burt, and we'll be back with more financial issues right after this.
So I was just getting on my feet and I met someone and I got pregnant and I wasn't ready. How am I going to raise a baby? And I barely can take care of my daughter and myself right now. I Googled abortions and I scheduled an appointment thinking it was an abortion clinic. When I was at the clinic, after they told me how far along I was and that the baby had a heartbeat, I cried. And it gave me a minute by myself in the room. I broke down and I prayed to God. I asked the Lord to, when I walk out of those doors, to just give me the strength to be able to go through the pregnancy. Made my decision at that time. I'm super grateful that I'm able to go down this journey with my daughter. And I'm just super glad that I didn't have an abortion. I've learned how to trust God. It feels amazing.
Navigating through investment options can be challenging, especially when you're determined to uphold your God-given values. Every dollar you invest is a vote for the world that you want to live in. Let your values guide your investment decisions and help to shape the culture in which we live. Become a beacon of light and pave the way with biblically responsible investing. Timothy Plan, where faith and finance collide. Before investing, carefully consider the fund's investment objectives, risks, charges, and expenses of the investment company. This and other important information can be found in the fund's prospectus. To obtain a copy, visit timothyplan.com or call 800-846-7526. Read each prospectus carefully before investing. Investing involves risk, including the potential loss of principal.
Well, thanks for sticking with us here, folks, this morning. Shana and I were talking about just kind of what has happened this year so far in the economy. And we left off with a question, the impact that Shana feels like will have in regards to the 2024 election. Shana, can we pick up on that a little bit and just tell our listeners what impact you think this could have, kind of on the election and on the economy in particular, and then we'll get to the markets as well.
Yeah. So with the markets, I think it depends less on the election than it does on what we're going to see here reported in earnings season coming up and how the some of the market is a forward-looking indicator. So the market tries to predict what's happening in the economy and sort of get ahead of it. And so just in a short period of time, a week or two, we're going to start to see earnings season for the second quarter of 2024 begin. So we're going to see how earnings are holding up under conditions, if inflation is still a big problem for them, how they're overcoming that, so on and so forth. I think that if earnings are holding up, hanging in there, then we'll probably see a positive finish, especially if we get that interest rate cut that the market has been expecting, at least one this year. And I still do think that that is going to come before the election. But, the bottom line is nobody really knows because here's some, I just did a Google search and I searched the internet, and according to a CNBC market strategist survey forecast, they ask the really educated, the really in the know people that work at the big firms, and they ask them what their prediction for the S&P 500 for the year end will be? Well, the most optimistic forecast, and keep in mind we're sitting at the S&P right now around 5,500, give or take a little bit. So the most optimistic forecast says that we're going to see a 9% increase over where we are right now and end 2024 at 6,000. The most pessimistic educated guess says that we're going to end the year at about 4,200, or about 25% below where we are right now. Now, the average, they took all of the responses and averaged them out, and the average said that it's going to end about where we are now. So you've got anywhere from 9% upside to just a flat finish from where we are now to a downside of 25%. So, the point is everybody's got their ideas, but in the short term, nobody really knows.
Absolutely. And what about the economy as a whole, Shana?
Well, I think inflation is going to continue to be a problem.
Yeah.
I talked about on the show recently what's happened with shipping costs. We're starting to see those skyrocket again. Energy consumption in this country is going to continue, especially with all of the AI things that are coming online. There's stories about, the grid not being able to handle the EV craze, even though that's really kind of flopped, at least for now. And if Trump comes into office, I think it's going to flop even more. But energy consumption in this country is going to continue to grow, especially as population increases. So, in spite of what Joe Biden says, we still have an open southern border. We still have more people coming into this country, and every person that comes in consumes electricity. And so, that's going to continue to be a problem with the grid. Housing, I think, is also going to continue to be a problem, especially if interest rates go down, and that spurs demand if people come back into the housing market, because we still have a shortage of housing. So we don't have enough inventory, so I think there's no matter who gets elected in November, things aren't going to change overnight.
Yeah.
And I think really too, we put so much focus on the president. We have to remember that the president does, or at least should, have limited power in this country, and that we have two other branches of government as well. And so, I think we need to keep that in mind and help keep our fears and our emotions in check.
Yeah, it's a good reminder, Shana, for sure. Kind of to close the conversation here, none of us can see the future, obviously. Only God can, as we talked about earlier. So how do we best prepare for whatever happens as we seek to be biblically responsible in our investments, knowing that depending on what happens in November of 2024, we could see different outcomes?
Yeah, so, I think that we just have to keep a level head about it. We have to know that whatever we don't know for a reason, especially if we've inquired of the Lord. And I think we just have to be obedient. We have to focus on the things that we can control. The things that we can control are how we invest. We can choose to honor God or to not honor God in our investment decisions. We can be biblically responsible, or we can take the stand, well, that just doesn't matter. God knows I love him. I just got to make money the best way that I know how, so that, all of those reasons that people give for not wanting to clean up their portfolios. We have to focus on our own household budgets. We have to be responsible. We have to commit to being content, to living within our means, and to saving for the future. So we just have to do the things that are within our control. We have to show up at the ballot box, at the voting booth, and we have to vote our conscience. So those are all of the things that we can do. It's better to focus on the things that you can actually have some control over, rather than things that you cannot. Those things we should commit to prayer for sure. Mm-hmm. So, as far as investing goes, especially if we get a correction, continue to invest. If you're engaged in a long-term investing process, certainly don't stop contributing regularly to your 401k or your investment account, if we see a correction, that's actually the best time for you to invest.
Yeah, that's good, Shana. Thank you for that. No, that's awesome. A great reminder for us, and I hope that can be calming for people as we understand. I do think we're standing on kind of the precipice of a really important moment in our country's history, and we say that about elections every year for sure, but this one just feels different. It really does.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, I saw an article too that really went into that EV, point that I started to make there. They said that 3 out of 4 EV charging developers say that they can't get enough electricity for their stations. So we talked about, they're selling all of these EVs, people are buying them left and right. And then, demand kind of slowed down, and even the rental companies kind of got overextended. They bought into this EV craze and bought fleets of EVs, and then they couldn't rent them out because people were having problems. It takes a lot of time and energy and effort to plan out your driving day. It's not like you can look down and say, oh, I've got a quarter of a tank left. I need to stop at a gas station. No, you've got to, figure out where the closest EV charging station is to you, and then see how crowded it is when you get there, and then wait who knows how long. I don't know how long does it take to charge one of those things. I know at least probably 45 minutes to 2 hours. I could be wrong on that, but
I'm sure. No, Shana, honestly, I've even seen there are certain electric lawnmowers that take an hour to charge, and you get 30 minutes of runtime. Great. I can mow a quarter of my lawn with that. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, even there's the EV manufacturers are starting to say that grid limitations are their biggest obstacle. 75% of them say that. 63% said that the total cost of infrastructure was a major problem. Even the Biden administration is wanting to force the trucking companies, these big, huge 18-wheelers, to try to convert their fleets over to EVs over diesel. But, I wonder if anybody's told them how much more those vehicles weigh, and what it's going to do to the already crumbling infrastructure in this country. The roads and the bridges that would have to be rebuilt to accommodate all of that is just, but, it's full steam ahead with this. And I'll steal from Trump here. He called it the what did he call it? The Green New Con, or the I forgot what he called it.
I think it's something like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Very Trumpian.
So, yeah. Folks, Jesus came to save the world, not save the earth, and I think that's the kind of thing that we have to be focused on, as well as the things that be about the business of our Father, because the scriptures tell us. It doesn't tell us exactly how the world's going to end, but it tells us that we're getting a new earth. So, I'm not suggesting that we should just not care and not be good stewards of the earth, because we should. But, trying to stop global warming or whatever they claim is happening with the world is just futile. It's like chasing the wind, right?
Yeah, for sure. We'd be well better served spreading the gospel, loving our neighbors, doing things like that. I think it's a good reminder.
Yeah. We often talk about, being good stewards and how our government really hasn't been a good steward. We're pushing $35 trillion in debt right now. But, there is something that gives me a little bit of hope. We talk on the show a lot about the outrageous spending of the government, and a lot of spending gets done by unelected bureaucrats in the government, in government agencies, thanks to a law that was made, or a court ruling that was made back in 1984, and it was called the Chevron Act, or the Chevron decision. And since 1984, we've watched Congress delegate their responsibility to manage the purse strings, the budget, the financials of the company, to an administrative class that Congress has created all of these agencies. So, we've seen laws create agencies like the Patriot Act, Dodd-Frank, Inflation Reduction Act. We've seen them create these huge bureaucracies and then transfer the power of the purse really to them. They've been transferring this power to an administrative state, or really a deep state. And this didn't really come under scrutiny until Trump started doing the same things that everyone else was doing. So the court has overturned that now. That's going to be a huge win going forward. It doesn't overturn the things that have already happened, but, I can see that as being a huge positive for the country. Well, folks, I hope that you're going to stick around, because we're going to, I've invited my friend Jason McDowell back to talk about some of the tax changes that could be coming down the pike, and what we can do as individuals to take advantage of a window of opportunity that still exists in the tax code. If you have to leave us, if you're watching on an outlet that carries the short version, we wish you a good day. For the rest of you, stick around. We're going to be back with more financial issues right after this break. Through the ministry of Preborn, the Financial Issues family has saved tens of thousands of lives of babies. What an amazing job that God has done through you, the Financial Issues family. Would you join us in saving the lives of babies? What an amazing reunion we will have in glory, meeting all the people that we have saved. Please go to preborn.org, that is preborn.org, or financialissues.org, and click on the Preborn banner.
Here at FISM News, our mission is to provide you with news from a source you can trust.
The news is a constant reminder that this world is not our home. It is marred by sin, resulting in wars, brokenness, and divisiveness.
Jesus promised that he will return soon to judge sin and make all things new.
Until then, we place our hope in him.
This is the good news, the most important truth we feel compelled to share.
When it comes to money, I always have so many questions. I never know where to go to get answers to those questions. They never really teach you this stuff in school, like some of the best ways to handle it, how to save, when to invest, where to invest, even just what to do with the money. And if I put it in the stock market, what's the best way to protect from losing it all? That fear can be paralyzing. You don't really know what decisions to make. As a Christian, I don't want to give my money to people who are going to use it for things that God hates. When I discovered Financial Issues, it was like a burden was lifted off my shoulders. Not only did I gain access to a simple investment strategy that I can manage myself, I also have the peace of mind that my money will not be going to companies that actively promote things that God hates. Financial Issues has allowed me to experience peace in my investments.
Invest your money in a God-honoring way. Go to financialissues.org.
I'm John.
I'm Debbie, and we're Samaritan members.
We have 8 children, ages from 30 down to 15, and we have a ministry called Family Man Ministries.
When he left the pastorate to start the ministry, we had no income for about a year potentially, and so we were living on almost nothing. The cost of healthcare seemed impossible because we had a big family. And so when I started researching ministries, there was no comparison. It was just the best deal. And so a year after we joined, my 10-year-old daughter at the time got pneumonia, and it was scary. Someone sent a card just to Maggie, and it said, not just that we're praying for you, but that God will always take care of you, and here's $5 for you to go out and get ice cream. It was just really special.
To make that connection, that's an amazing thing. I was sold on Samaritan Ministries. I just thought, okay, I'm a part of this.
Securities offered through G.A. Reppel & Company, a registered broker-dealer and investment advisor, member FINRA and SIPC. Opinions expressed by Shana are hers alone and are for informational purposes only, and do not necessarily represent those of G.A. Reppel or the outlet on which you are listening. You should consider how the information applies to your situation prior to personally implementing it, and consult any financial professional you work with to make sure it's applicable to your financial plan.
Thanks for sticking with us here at Financial Issues. We're so glad that you tuned in. You know, we spend the second half of the show really focusing, digging a little bit deeper into the financial issues strategy. And if you're a partner, one of the benefits that you have is that you get to ask us questions that we get to answer on the air. So we always want to be talking about the things that are important to you guys. So we have some tax questions that we want to talk about today. And I've invited my friend and colleague, Jason McDowell, back to be with us here today to talk about, you know, specifically our experience and how we handle this in private practice, the questions that we get that come up when we're working one-on-one with clients. And, you know, they're really a lot of the same questions that we get from partners of the ministry. So one of the things that we get asked a lot is about contributing to IRAs, especially we just passed tax time. And, you know, in my experience, tax professionals tend to live in the short term. So actually they tend to live a little bit in the past because they're trying to look at what you did last year and figure up your tax liability that you need to pay the government to stay out of jail and in good standing and keep your stuff. But they're really looking at, you know, ways that people can minimize taxes in the short term. Now, we happen to take a little bit of a broader view about it. You know, our scripture of the day today was about the sons of Issachar and, you know, how they discerned the signs of the times. And so we look around at the things, at the situation that we're in right now, government spending being out of control, running deficits, continuing to borrow money, and we know that the government gets revenue from taxes. So, you know, we're of the opinion that taxes are going to be higher in the future than what they are today. So we want to talk about some really practical things that you can start to consider in your own personal financial plan. So we don't want to be so short-sighted. And just to kind of recap, Jason, would you kind of recap the things that we talked about last week? You know, we have the expiration of the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act happening at for 2026 if Congress doesn't do anything. So can you kind of key in on the main things, the standard deduction, the tax brackets adjusting and things like that, just to review real quickly?
Absolutely. Thanks for having me again. I appreciate it. So with Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, that's going to expire December 31st of 2025. The biggest changes that are going to affect pretty much a majority of all of us is the standard deduction getting cut in half. So that's going to go back to the 2017 law as it stands now, if it doesn't get changed. Also, the other issues with it is the tax brackets are going to go back to the percentage brackets of 2000, the revert to the old law, basically. That drops the 12% bracket, becomes a 10%, 15%, and then 25, 28, and 33. So it's basically just going to get higher, and it's possible that some of us in the 22% bracket will get now pushed up to a 25% bracket, and that kind of falls all the way down. The 10% bracket will still stay the same. So
in other words, basically, you're going to have more of your income in higher tax brackets. So, you know, that translates into more taxes. So what are some of the real practical things that we talk about with our clients every day that we can do to lower taxes? Well, because we believe that taxes are going to be higher in the future than what they are today, number one is we can stop putting money into pre-tax accounts. So one of the questions, you know, we kind of get looked at like we have three eyes sometimes when we say that, because people have been so trained to put money in their pre-tax accounts, and that's what they're hearing from their CPAs. You know, you want to save money on your taxes, make your IRA contribution, and then they come to us and then we say, okay, you know, let's have this hard discussion. You know, do you want to pay taxes today at 12%, or do you want to pay what they're going to be in the future? And then we get asked, well, what about the match? What would you say to them, Jason?
Oh, the match. The match is great. If you're still working with an employer doing a percentage match, doing up to the match is great. And the real reason for that, doing up to the match, is that you're getting money from the employer. So that's money that doesn't come out of your paycheck, essentially, like, right, the government takes, you know, for taxes if there's withholding, but then also, you know, your contributions, you're getting an additional contribution to that. The suggestion from there is if there's more saving you want to do for your retirement, then if you can do it after tax, whether that's to a investment brokerage account or non-qualified, as we also call it, or if you have the capabilities, depending on your income, a Roth contribution is possible as well, but keeping that in those non-qualified accounts. So those are some options doing up to the match with that amount. Mm-hmm.
Good. So you don't necessarily have to stop putting all money in, and you would want to get that match because that's instant return, right? But you may want to, instead of doing 15% of your income, just do what's the typical thing that we see that my employer matches 6% or 3%. Sometimes it's higher than that, but for the most part, that's what it is. So limit your contribution to whatever you have to put to get the match, and then start diversifying your other types of accounts. So that being said, Jason, what do you say to the person that says, should I contribute to my IRA account this year?
Contributing to the IRA this year just to save in taxes. The issue with that, we've had that come up a couple times just with clients in the practice, and the mentality of it is to save taxes this year. But the issue is that we believe that taxes are going to be higher in the future, and we can already say when, after the end of 2025. Thus, if taxes are going higher, even though you saved a little bit this year, the government, Uncle Sam's going to get more of that in the future when you take it out of those qualified accounts. So we suggest probably contributing to a non-qualified account outside of those accounts so that you don't have the issue of the taxes being higher in the future.
Right. Not cookie cutter. Everybody's in a different situation, so you really have to consider all that. So stop putting money in, or maybe as much money in. But what about the getting money out? That's the other thing that you can do to help minimize potentially being in a very much higher tax bracket in the future. So some ways to get money out, Roth conversions. What about a Roth conversion?
Roth conversion. Yes. So moving from, say, a traditional IRA or qualified account over to a Roth conversion, we suggest talking with your tax professional on withholding from there, where you actually move the money out and you send taxes, you pay the taxes on that, and then move it over to the Roth IRA. It is still right now tax advantageous currently under this law.
Right. A couple of considerations, and you'll want to go over with your tax person. There's a 5-year rule to avoid, all of the taxes and penalties. If you're under 59 and a half, if you withhold some money, that might not be considered a conversion. You might have to pay taxes on that. But that's a great way to diversify your types of accounts. If you already have a lot in a Roth, then maybe you want to consider, and both of these options really are kind of a no-brainer if you're in the 12% bracket. If you're in a higher bracket than that, you have some other considerations. But if you don't do the Roth conversion, maybe you've already got a lot there. What about just distributing money to just a regular investment account?
Yeah, that's perfect. So the regular investment account, you're just removing money you're just not putting any more money into this qualified account so that the government can't change the rules on it in the future. Now, the taxation part of the investment accounts is just realized capital gains and dividends and interest that come out of that. So that's all. The government can't change the rules on it. So that's the long-term plan that you can use with the non-qualified accounts.
Good. So to get money out, Roth conversion maybe, no matter what age you are, if you're distributing to that investment account, if you're under 59 and a half, you got to be aware that there could be a penalty there. So maybe not the best option for the younger people. And then what about a qualified charitable distribution? What about doing your giving?
QCDs are great. So if you're 70 and a half and older, as the current law stands, you can do your giving. And we recommend doing as much as your giving or all of your giving out of your qualified accounts, your IRAs, if you're 70 and a half or older at that point. That bypasses Uncle Sam. It goes directly to where you're giving to, the tax-exempt organizations. And then a part of that is it also satisfies RMDs once you get to the age that you have to do a required minimum distribution. So it's a kind of a twofold benefit there.
Yeah, good stuff. Well, I hate it that we're running out of time because there's so much more that we could say about all of this. And even there's a new rule that allows you to take out, if you're 70 and a half, to do a one-time $50,000 distribution to fund a charitable gift annuity or charitable remainder trust. So many different ideas out there. I wish we had time to, dig into all of the details of all of them, but we've at least give you some things to get started thinking about. Well, Jason, thanks for being with us today. We appreciate your input on this, and we hope that we help you guys be a better steward when it comes to taxes. We definitely have to pay Caesar what we are owing to Caesar, but we don't want to give him a cent more. Well, folks, thanks for tuning in to Financial Issues. Hang around. We're going to be back with more financial issues right after this break.
When it comes to handling money, I'm lost. How to save, when to invest, where to invest. As a Christian, I don't want to give my money to people who are going to use it for things God hates. When I discovered Financial Issues, it was like a burden was lifted off my shoulders. Not only did I gain access to a simple investment strategy that I can manage myself, I also have the peace of mind that not a single penny of my money is going to companies that actively...
In a world where financial decisions can feel overwhelming, it's easy to lose sight of what truly matters. But what if there is a way to align your financial goals with your deepest values? Financial Issues has helped us navigate the complex world of finance through a biblical lens. By prioritizing and investing in a way that honors God, Financial Issues has empowered us to focus on what truly matters: our family, our faith, and our future. With Financial Issues by our side, we can invest knowing that our financial decisions are in line with our values. Take the first step today and become a Financial Issues partner to access rich online resources, training tools, and guidance for biblically responsible investing. Head over to financialissues.org and learn how to invest your money in a way that honors God. That's financialissues.org.
There are moments in life that define us. Choices determine the courses we take. Choices that create life, or those that save a life. And some make life worthwhile. There are decisions to stay or to go, to remain the same or to grow. Sometimes we pray and make peace. Other times we take a stand for what we believe. In celebration, mourning, triumph, and defeat, we are invested in every decision we seek. Despite differences, we have one thing in common: the desire to do all for the glory of God. Keep your wallet aligned with your heart and your investments in harmony with your faith. Timothy Plan, biblically responsible mutual funds, ETFs, and retirement plans. Before investing, carefully consider a fund's investment objective, risks, charges, and expenses contained in the prospectus available at timothyplan.com. Read carefully before investing.
The opinions and recommendations expressed on this program do not necessarily represent the opinions of the station or any of the program sponsors. Additionally, all products or services offered by the program sponsors may not be known by the program.
Well, I hope you all enjoyed that segment with Shana and Jason there. It's good to be here with you all, folks. Hope you had a great holiday weekend as well. Great to be back live today. So many of you on the chat this morning. So good morning to all of you. It's great to see you there this morning. Let's take a quick look here, folks, at what the markets did on Friday. So they finished the day in the first week of quarter three actually in moderately positive territory after the off day on the 4th. By Friday's closing bell, the Dow was up about 0.1%. The S&P 500 was up about a little more than a half, and the NASDAQ almost a full percentage point. The pre-markets this morning were a little bit muted. So investors are awaiting inflation data this week, which we'll get to in just a moment, and the beginning of earnings season. Believe it or not, we're back in earnings season once again, this time for quarter number 2. So we'll talk about that in just a moment as well. So the market's kind of waiting with bated breath here, and as they opened 15 minutes ago or so, kind of continued in that way. The Dow's looking pretty good. It's up about 0.2%. The S&P 500 is up about 1/5, and the NASDAQ is hanging around right below the flat line this morning. Oil is right around $82.25 a barrel as it sits. and the U.S. 10-year Treasury yields up around 4.29 percentage points. That's what we're looking like there in the markets right now, folks. Real quick here, I would love for all of you to join me in praying for Craig Halgard. Craig had another doctor's appointment today, so we don't have an ag from him today, but I've been texting with him, and I'll make sure to have an update for you all. If I have it by the end of the show, I'll give it to you for sure, but nothing too crazy, but just, continual healing for him. So I would encourage you to pray for Craig definitely there. We'll make sure to have an ag report tomorrow, God willing. But for now, we do have a question that I want to get to. Grant, let's get to Brian's question right there.
Yeah, so Brian was just asking, has Tractor Supply removed their woke upper management?
That's
all
a
the
good,
people who wanted to do this, woke agenda.
Yeah, that's a really good question, Brian. So let me explain real quickly what transpired last week for any of you who missed it. Of course, we've been keeping an eye on Tractor Supply. Tractor Supply looked like they were stepping into some of the woke stuff, looked like they were beginning to support the LGBTQ stuff. And then, by God's grace, I feel like they turned course. And they issued a statement to their shareholders, issued a statement to their customers. I think it was on the 27th, I want to say, of June. And they basically said, we're not going to do this stuff. We're going to focus on being a good company. It was essentially corporate repentance, which is awesome. We were so pleased with that. Now, Brian, to answer your question, I did some research this morning. I've not heard any news that Tractor Supply has removed their senior management for either reason. On one hand, you would wonder, okay, maybe they'll get removed because they are woke, or maybe they'll get removed by the woke mob, But I will say this. Here's what I believe happened, Brian. I think that their senior management, and again, they do have some pretty left-leaning senior management, personally, at least, they probably personally disagreed with this move, but my guess is what happened is they're smart businessmen and they made a good business move. And a good business move was simply saying, look, we can't alienate a huge portion of our base in order to do this. Look at what happened to Bud Light. Look at what's happened to Target. We can't do this. We're not going to try to appease culture warriors. We are going to try to make a good profit by selling things like lawnmowers and tractor supplies, okay? And so they said, you know what? That's what we're going to do. Pretty simple. We're going to try to make a profit. And I think it's going to pay off for them. I think putting the interests of their customers first and their business as well is really going to be a good move. And I think that's what they did. They might disagree with some of the political sides of it. And I think we should applaud this move. And regardless of the fact that, listen, these people probably aren't Christians. We probably disagree with them seriously on certain things like the definition of marriage and the definition of gender. But they put aside their personal beliefs, namely the CEO, in order to basically make a good move for their company. And that's to be applauded. And so we want to make sure that we do that and show our support for them, because that was a really good move and it was a courageous move. However, it ended up coming out. Maybe they felt like they really wanted to move the company in a left-leaning direction, and their feet were maybe they had their feet put to the fire. Maybe they were forced. But regardless, they made the right decision. So that's really, really good. Folks, here's a really good opportunity for you as well. So I'm dropping something in the chat right now. I just put it in there. It's our take action form. So oftentimes we do this when companies go in the wrong direction, and before we issue a sell alert, or right as we issue a sell alert, we kind of make a last-ditch effort to tell them, please turn your course. We want you to go back to just making a profit. And so we will have a petition, and we'll ask you all to sign this petition telling these companies, stop doing what you're doing, come back to the right way. Well, here's a different sort of petition that we have for you here. This this is all part of the, as what Dan used to call the FISM megaphone. So we want to use this for good. We want to use it to hold companies accountable. We also want to encourage companies when they do something right, like what happened with Tractor Supply. So we've had many of these petitions in the last 2 years and beyond of companies that have not remain biblically responsible, and we've had to sell them. We want to encourage the companies that do what's right. So we have a petition of sorts. It's really a letter of encouragement, a letter of thanks to tell Tractor Supply, thank you for doing what was right. Thank you for just being a good company. Thank you for not getting involved in the woke stuff. Thank you for putting your shareholders' interests and your customers' interests ahead of political agendas. This was a good move, and we want to applaud you for that. So there's a petition live right now on financialissues.org. I just dropped the chat. I just dropped the link into the chat. If you go to financialissues.org, scroll down a little bit, you'll see that button, Sign the Petition. It's a yellow button under Take Action. It says sign the FISM petition as a way of holding companies accountable. Again, this is not holding a company accountable as much as it is encouraging this company for what they did that was right. So that's what this is. I'd encourage you to sign that today. We have a couple signatures on it already. And so we are trying to get as many as we can to show our support for Tractor Supply. And folks, this is important also because not only are we trying to support them and tell them, hey, we think you did a great job, we're also trying to tell them, listen, please don't do something like what you were tempted to do in the future. Okay, there are a lot of people who want to invest in you. There are a lot of people who like what you do. And so this is, in a way, also holding them accountable, too. But it's mainly for encouragement. So sign that when you have the chance, folks. Brian, back to your question. I hope that helps, man. My understanding is Tractor Supply has not removed their senior management folks. And you know what? It seems like, based on what they did with this, they have some pretty solid business models and pretty solid business motives also. So yeah, it's really, really exciting. I think that's awesome stuff. Grant, I know you had something that you wanted to just share as well with our listeners.
Yeah, so one of the headlines that I saw this morning was the fact that and the reason why this letter of support is so important is because there are woke organizations coming out and saying, oh, wow, I can't believe you reversed this woke agenda that you were going to do. I can't believe you basically betrayed us. But the thing is that they know that they're making the good decision because ultimately they're doing something for the shareholders, not for their own political groups that they probably support. But that's why this letter is so important. Yeah. So go and sign it, guys.
Absolutely. Grant, thank you for sharing that. And it's, you know what, it's a reminder too, Grant, that we've said this on air before also. This is a courageous thing that they did. This is really a courageous thing. This is not an easy thing to do, to go against the mob that owns the White House, and it owns the healthcare system, and it owns most of Wall Street, and it owns seemingly every area, the media, sports media, journalism, all of it. It's not easy to go against this, but these guys, you know what, they made the right decision. They need to be applauded for it. So I think it's really good. So folks, sign that link today. Follow that link. Sign that petition of sorts. Again, it's not really a petition because it's more just a letter of encouragement, but sign that petition. That's what we're calling it. And it's good stuff there. Brian, I appreciate the question, brother. That's awesome. So I mentioned earlier, folks, when we were talking about the markets, earnings season is kicking off this week. Not a lot of note today, not a lot of note tomorrow or Wednesday. Thursday will be a little interesting. We'll get Delta Airlines, we'll get Pepsi. And then Friday will be a little more interesting. We get a couple of big banks, Citigroup, JP Morgan Chase. We also get Wells Fargo as well. So the back half is going to kind of really tell us a little bit more about what some of these banks at least are doing. And that'll be kind of the kickoff for earnings season for quarter two. What to look for in the economy this week, folks. Later today, we get consumer credit. Then tomorrow, we get the NFIB Optimism Index. At 11 o'clock Eastern Time, Fed Chair Jerome Powell will give a testimony. We'll be interested to see what happens and how the markets respond to that. Wednesday, we get wholesale inventories. Then Thursday, we get our weekly jobless claims, as well as consumer price index and the monthly U.S. federal budget. Friday, we'll get the producer price index, and we'll get the UMich consumer sentiment after the closing, or after the show ends, in the morning. That's what we're looking at for the economy this week. Quick headline I wanted to get to here before we close here. Google apparently is dropping short of its climate goals due to AI demand. Very interesting. Google's greenhouse gas emissions have increased by 50% in the last 5 years. And so some people are wondering, people on the left especially are wondering, hey, Google, what are you doing here? And they're not the only tech company that's seen this effect on emissions rise due to AI. Microsoft emissions grew by 29% in almost the same time span. Here's what I think is happening, folks. We're coming to it. It's not to overly simplify what's happening. I think this is just what's happening. I believe Google is facing a choice, much like Tractor Supply is faced. Either do we satisfy the left-wing political agenda, or do we make money by meeting a growing AI demand? What's happening is, in order for Google to keep up, they've got to kind of, go a little bit away from their left-leaning agenda when it comes to emissions and greenhouse gases and things like that. I think we're beginning to see what's happening here. We're seeing this on the show all the time, folks. Woke policies, woke agendas, they rarely lead to financial success. If anything, they lead to financial ruin. And it's going to be interesting to see how Google responds to this, not just in a statement, but in action. The question is, will they bow to a political agenda, or will they continue to try to lead in the AI arms race? It'll be very interesting to see that, folks. We'll try to make some more sense of it on the coming shows. For now, remember, everything you have belongs to the Lord. He is on the throne, and that's good news for you. Let's be found good and faithful stewards with the money God has given to us. Until tomorrow, I'm Seth Udinsky, and we'll see you then for more financial issues. Have a great day.
If we ever forget that we're one nation under God, then we will be a nation gone under.
Thank you for joining us. This has